School Board of Trustees is subject to open meeting law, is being recorded in accordance with section 2-2-301, 2-3-202, 2-3-203, and 2-3-214 Montana Code annotated. All members of the board, staff, and public in attendance are advised that the public portions of the meeting will be recorded in both an audio and video format. Cameras and recording devices are placed throughout the meeting room to complete these recordings. Everyone in attendance is reminded to honor basic rules of decorum during the meeting and guidance associated with providing public comment as stated in policy 1420F. By remaining in the meeting, those present consent to being recorded and displayed in the footage that will be posted on the school district's website. Welcome everybody. There'll be an opportunity for community comment on non-agenda items at the end. So we'll start with superintendent.
Do we want to move to the first item on the discussion item?
Yes,
for the president, and then they can decide from there what they okay.
Page 65.
Alright, so page 65. So the SEA has requested to open the bargaining agreement for a limited scope bargaining session regarding the money from the STARS Act. The current agreement that we have with them is in the final year of a 3-year agreement, and that agreement adds an additional 4% increase and will keep us in full compliance of the STARS Act beyond the 5-year layout to increase this from 62% to the average 70% of the average. Part of the STARS Act started with a lower percentage you had to meet for your starting salary. It had to be 62% of your average salary. And then by the 5th year, it'll bump to you have to be at 70% of your average salary in the district. So that's where this, basically if it would have been year 5 this last year or going into next year, we would have had to have increased like by 1,000, something like that. So with the increases that we'll see, it puts us well over the 70% for that 5th year. Just so that's clear on that. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to use the money for, but according to MTSBA, the money can be used for anything that you would spend from the general fund. This would include reading curriculum, salaries, district projects, etc. This is only a request to bargain. I would suggest that if you open up the agreement to bargain, we should fully open the bargaining agreement to try to reach a deal from after our current agreement expires. This would allow us to come to an agreement far ahead of the end of the school year. This is only a suggestion if you decide to agree to bargain now. And I think we just need probably a discussion and kind of figure out where we want to go from there. As it's dealing with bargaining, this would basically be between the board and the SEA.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I guess the SEA representatives are here.
And they did fill out a yellow sheet. I know Lindsay wanted to speak on
Let's
this.
go ahead and let you guys kick it off.
Good. I have my notes on my phone, so. Just really quickly, I appreciate all of you guys being here. I don't know if you all know who I am, but I'm Lindsay Wagner. I'm the new president of the SEA. I'm also a teacher at Westside. I do K-2 special education. So I would first like to thank the board for past negotiations that have been mutually agreed upon by the district and the SEA. I felt like we made a lot of progress in our last negotiations. I'm here to follow up on the request that we enter good faith bargaining regarding the use of STARS funding to increase teachers' salaries. In discussions with MFPE, school boards should bargain with local agencies based on the surmountable change in funding for schools. The intent of the STARS initiative is clear: to raise teachers' wages and improve retention. Sidney Public Schools already meets the minimum salary thresholds, which puts us in a unique position. Rather than simply meeting the floor, we have the opportunity to lead and become a shining star in Northeast Montana. Unfortunately, over the past 5 years, particularly since COVID, our salaries have not kept up with inflation. This has eroded the real value of educator pay, making it harder to attract and retain quality professionals our students deserve. We're not just asking for a raise, we are asking for recognition of the work our teachers do every single day, and a meaningful use of the funds that were specifically designated to support and retain educators. Investing STARS dollars into salaries would demonstrate to current staff and future hires that Sidney values its educators and is committed to excellence in education. Our district mission statement says that we strive to be the #1 Class A school in the state. And in order to do that, we must be able to be competitive in our salary matrix. Every district around Sidney has opened their negotiations to bargain for the STARS funding. Currently, the district, according to the website, has 11 open certified teaching positions. There are also many classified positions open, which has put a strain on certified staff that are helping in those departments as well, whether it be cleaning, extra intervention groups, title, and extra duties that just need to be covered. It will go a long way in recruitment of new teachers to have a salary matrix that reflects the use of the STARS funding. Thank you.
Let's see. I never wanna open, I never wanna open negotiations. If we have a contract, and I agree, if we do, then it needs to be for the future contract, not just an amendment to the current one.
Can I still speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I don't think we're opposed to that.
Okay.
That was something that we had talked about, you know, like, yes, we're in year 3 of our current contract, but it might be more beneficial to just open the whole thing up and just get it all done with. Rather than doing the STARS funding now and dealing with one aspect of the master agreement, we're not opposed to doing full negotiations at this point to, you know, and not have to do it again in January. So, I mean, we value your guys' time. I realize that these are not paid positions, you know, and you guys are doing this to help our community. So, you know, we also want to make sure that we use your time wisely as well.
Do we have the documentation and the financial documentation available, or would we have it available?
All
For negotiations.
If we were gonna start negotiations, we haven't gotten into that. As far as looking at what potential increases might look like and the money that would cost.
No, just like do we have any idea from a financial standpoint where we're going to be to, you know, that's the hard part is, you know, we don't know yet, do we?
We just got notice of she's got notice of the budgets, what the preliminary for the budgets, but there's still another form they need to send out.
Okay.
So we don't know what that money is gonna look like.
Sort of.
I was gonna say, I do have some, if I can find it here on my phone, I do have, when we had our president's meeting, a month or so ago, I have some notes from that, what the state is basically anticipating that STARS funding is gonna look like every year,
And that's
so.
what we have is the,
Yeah, like this next year is like 3,700 and something per quality educator, and then it goes up a percentage from there.
So as far as just the STAR side, you're talking about though,
Our total budget, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking total budget, cause the one big issue we're gonna see next year is gonna be our oil revenue is probably gonna drop off significantly. Oil prices are down and it's not looking good.
No, we saw that with the fourth quarter checks as well.
Yeah.
So what I usually do is try to figure out how much, cause we take a lot of the certified salaries out of the flex fund. And with that money, my plan was to see how many we can get out of the flex fund, put it back into the general fund. To not have to use the flex fund for salaries.
Right.
Yep. I think that's our intentions from the last negotiation. We were gonna try to move some of that out of there.
Yeah.
The other piece to that is, with there being two different budgets, the elementary's in a lot tighter situation than the high school. Like significantly tighter. So we've been very conscious about just general spending, on the elementary side. Like I know there was some requests even for some tables for a science classroom, and we were waiting to see where we finished up with our general fund budget for the elementary side before we ordered anything.
Yeah, cause we did that
The interlocal, we don't,
Interlocal.
I'd rather not use that money for buying tables.
No.
Nice if we're using it for.
Carl used for something. gets upset when we get into those.
I mean, I guess where I'm at is I'm fine with opening negotiation for the next contract, but in reality, that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be affecting the next school year, not this upcoming school year. You know, so we'd be looking at how do we spend the money for that, is where I'm at. And, you know.
So you would be looking at it for the 26th?
Yeah, I mean, basically, if we're just starting negotiations early on the next contract, not renegotiating next year's contract. Cause, I mean, we're into June, so you start negotiating, even if you get into July, these never get solved in a month.
Correct.
You know, so then you're probably looking November, December, and then if we did make changes to next year's, then they've gotta cut checks for back pay if we raised everything, which, you know, creates another cluster. And can even create clusters with taxes and everything else, right? If you're just giving them a lump sum back payment, you know. So I guess that's where I'm at with it, is, you know, if we can open the negotiations early, but it would be for the next contract. I don't foresee a way that negotiating this current contract is even really feasible at this point. Cause it's just, contracts never, they take 6 months. The negotiations take 6 months.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think it would help a little bit maybe for your decisions if we start looking at what we're going to get on the star side, which I think it's a little bit north of 550,000. But start looking at that like, okay, how would this look if we used a portion to pull people out of the flex fund on the elementary side?
Right.
And I mean, you do have other big purchases, like we're purchasing a new reading curriculum for K-5. Start looking at offsetting some of that, that's about $200,000, I think we approved at the last board meeting. And then you're still gonna have over 150,000 probably left over when you start looking at some of that. You can pull a few and use some for that, then I mean, maybe then you're looking at.
Yeah, well, I guess the way I look at it is we tried to be fairly fiscally responsible. We knew we were gonna spend this money, you know, on the reading curriculum and whatever. So in essence, we're taking any STARS money we get this year, putting in savings to be used for the future. And we, you know, essentially we'd be paying it out a year later, not the year we get it. Because the problem with that is new election cycle, new policies come down, and all of a sudden we've decided, hey, we've got $500,000 in STARS coming, we're gonna pay it out, and then it's, oh, no, we don't. Because now we have a new governor, new whatever.
New legislation.
Yeah, and then, you know, then we're stuck holding the bag. Whereas if we're essentially paying it out a year behind, or working with that money a year after we get it, it protects us in the future. You know, we're not spending it before we get it, we're getting it and then taking care of the money after the fact.
So you'd mentioned using the STARS money to pay for the reading program. Where was the money for the reading program gonna come from
Flex fund.
otherwise?
Flex.
And
So
is that the
there's-
one that, sorry, I don't know.
No, you're good.
So the flex fund, is that the one that's funded by all the oil revenue? Does the oil revenue go into flex fund?
Well, and this one specifically would be from the interlocal agreement, so they call that an interlocal agreement, so that means we can take money from the high school flex and put it into the elementary flex, so we took $1 million out this last year. So more than likely, that 200,000 is gonna come out of that $1 million that we moved over through that interlocal agreement.
Yeah, right now we have the money. My point is more along the lines of 3 years from now, STARS money goes away, oil money's way down, but we've, you know, if we planned on, no, we need to spend our STARS money and then we don't get it, where is that money gonna come from?
Right.
Cause we've made a fairly decent effort to keep a certain dollar amount in flex to cover things like big projects of buildings, basically, roofs and air conditioning and, you know, anything like that. So that's where we try to keep those monies in flex, or in building reserve, you know, cause we can transfer money out of flex into buildings reserve, stuff like that, but that's where I'm at with it. I think the majority of us are kind of in the same boat, you know, so again, if you guys wanna open negotiations early, we're completely fine with that. I think, you know, we'll have a discussion on how we handle negotiation for this upcoming term. We've done it different ways. Last time we did it with just a committee instead of the full board. You know, but yeah, as far as making any changes to next year, I don't really even see where it's really even something that we can. I mean, could we do it? Absolutely. Could we do it correctly and you know, in the best interest of the district as a whole? I don't think we could. I really don't. We've got our budget set. We got to kind of see where things are going to go, and then we can start moving on for future negotiations. Josh, anything?
I agree.
Okay. Anything else?
I wouldn't mind tabling it until August. I need to wrap my head around some of the, financial stuff, I think. And I like to see stuff on paper,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
and if that would, I mean, is that an option?
Yeah, it's always an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had that in my recommendations,
Yeah.
potential table
Yep.
for August, cause July is really when they go to work on figuring out what is our, so when we get our 3% inflationary increase, what's that gonna do to the general fund budget, where's that money, I mean, where are we potentially looking at putting that money? Right now it's tough because we don't have those numbers, all we know is we're getting this STARS fund, or money, but we don't know what the rest of our budget, I guess, looks like.
I just feel like I need to educate myself a little bit more about it, and I don't wanna waste somebody else's time if they know things because you've been around longer. But also just about this, I mean, the STARS money, and I could probably chat with you about
Mhm.
that.
Absolutely.
Cause I know you know.
I'd make a recommendation to table the decision regarding the SCA request to bargain.
So a second.
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So table till the August meeting.
Okay, and we do have 2 meetings in August, I'll try to put it on the first one.
Okay.
You guys good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, you want me to start in on superintendent reports?
Yep.
Okay, so this month, since we have, handbook changes, I just told the principals just to send those instead of sending a board report. You can see, so end of year numbers for enrollment, 1,237, which is down 1,245, from last month. I mean, that's how we ended the year, I guess. But still up 17 from the beginning, or sorry, the end of last year. Down a little bit from the beginning of this year. I think one thing we're really starting to see, to be honest with you, is in town at homeschool. There's a lot of kids that are moving to homeschool platforms. And I mean, I'll work pretty closely with Tim again this year, but even like the end of the year stuff, it's, you know, kids that are, well, I mean, and some of it too was, there was some behavior stuff, I know that came up in a few situations where, that's where those numbers, I think, ended up a little bit lower as well. But I do think that the homeschool numbers are really increasing, and we're starting to see a little bit of a hit from that, so.
So are you thinking that the homeschool aspect of this is basically just to allow the kids more freedom?
Yeah. Yep. You know, we've had some, and when it kind of came out, where we started to see more of it was like rodeo.
Yeah.
It was a tough season as far as travel, missing a lot of school, and that's where we started to see it, and now it's, with all the freedom you have now on the homeschool side to still be able to participate, you know, things like that, there's really nothing that stops anybody from not just doing that and having their kids kind of do what they want with the school still. So, yeah, but I'll talk, like I said, I'll talk to Tim. he stays up on those numbers, and him and I kinda communicate on some of that stuff, but it'd be interesting to see how many total we have, just that would be in our, salaries, yeah. Okay, not a ton as far as other things going on in June, because really since the last time we met, it was the very end of the year, and then just wrapping some things up. As far as our admin team meetings, the majority of those have evolved around staffing. I know Lindsay talked about having 11 certified staff, we don't, we have 7 right now that we're looking for, we've got. And part of that in there, and that's not anybody's fault, when we hire some of these teachers on class 5 licenses, you have to prove that you are advertising for those positions in order to still collect the money for them and for them to qualify for those. So we have to basically advertise for anybody on a class 5 or class 3 license. Those have to be advertised for year round. So it looks like we have that, but a lot of those positions are filled. It's just maybe not with somebody that has a teaching degree. They're working towards one. So right now we're looking at 3. We do have 3 special ed teachers if we hired that would make us completely full at every building. The high school over the last, I think, 3 years has operated with 2. Middle school last year was full with 3, we're down to 2 there. The big one is, West Side, getting a special ed teacher there. Our 3rd teacher there is gonna be crucial. And then it would be middle school, Central's full. So, and then as far as the certified staff, numbers wise, if you looked at it like kindergarten, you don't technically need that, but we do need a kindergarten teacher, just cause we know those numbers always go up as the summer, moves along. 1st grade, and actually we were full in kindergarten by resignation last week.
Do you know where she's going?
I think East Fairview, I heard.
Okay,
Yeah,
I like her.
yeah, and then, where's the other one? Oh, we've got the middle school tech for Marie Holler is transferred to math, and, 1 1st grade position. So, yeah, we're still looking. We have some interviews lined up. We have some, I do have 1 person that I've been in touch with the middle school position that we may also fill a coaching position. So I mean, we've got some options. We're not like just scrambling like we have been some years, but we're not in terrible shape as far as where we're at. I would feel way better if we could hire a special ed teacher for West Side. Okay, school safety. This is one thing that came out of the legislative session. They have, they're basically like attachments that you can add to doors, and they lock them from the inside, so the teacher would just go up. It's kind of like a door stopper. The only thing you have to do is you have to get it approved by your safety inspector. So I'm gonna look. I know that there's grant money for those when they pass that, so I'm gonna kind of look into that. I think that would be a good thing, minimally to look at doing for the high school and middle school. All of our schools, yeah, I mean, it would be great, but I do think that when you start to look at the targets of the really tragic happenings in schools, with your middle and high school probably being the biggest need, and then we could always look at the elementary after that. And we haven't had any threat assessments, and we did not have a labor management committee meeting. Then you can see the open positions, resignations. We had Brad Delfino, IT assistant. They are doing interviews for that position tomorrow. They got 2 people lined up. Emily Brown, full-time kindergarten teacher, and Jewel Almeida, preschool aide. And you can see the transfers that we did. Holly Blankestead, Westside title and speech. Melissa Bauman, middle school sped aide, middle school title aide. Erica Klempel, half-time title, half-time sped aide to full-time sped aide. Okay, starting on page 6, those are the resignation letters, if you want to look at those. Meeting minutes start on page 10 from the May 12th, right? We'll get there when it's in there somewhere. And then our financials start on page 13 with the check registered. See, one of the obviously really big ones would have been, had to have been our Chromebook and desktop order. Starting on page 16 is our county reports for the interest payments that we received. Page 19, budgeted funds report of expenditures. You can see the percentage of each item that we've spent. This should be through May. No, this is through April. And then page 21, be your general fund revenue received versus anticipated. Cash balances are on page 23, and then we start with ASB on 24. Any questions on the financials? I don't wanna rush you through those, but there's a lot. I know there's a lot there. And if you ever have questions on that as well, these two are a great resource for answering those questions, but I can help you out as well. More than likely, if you ask me a question about that, I'll go ask them a question.
I'll just save us all some time.
Okay, handbook changes and additions for the 25-26 school year, so you can see west side. Some of these are pretty minimal. Obviously, put the Friday sessions on, address the address and emergency numbers changes, so there's some wording when, people come in at the beginning of the year that they wanna make sure that they have the correct address on those. And anytime that their address changes, they're supposed to come in and let the schools know. Dress code, they added one section. Human sexuality, this has to go on all of them. We were a little bit lighter on how we worded these on the elementary side because we don't have any curriculum or resources that we are knowingly using that addresses human sexuality. So as far as West Side and Central School go, there's nothing that we really would be teaching. The closest thing that we probably get to that is we have a nurse come in and talk about hygiene to our 5th graders. So if something comes up though, this is what they're going to, the protocol that they'll follow. That changed. I'm trying to remember how this word goes. No more than, okay, it's no more than 10 days and not less than 5 days now notification. Instead, it used to be 48 hours. So you have that 10 to 5 day window of when you're gonna do it, or when you have to let parents know and they can opt out. Central, I'll get to the lunch one here in a second. That's gonna change in all of them. So the new additions of the handbook, she's got accidents and injuries. Each student should report immediately. His or her supervising teacher, all accidents occurring from him. This does come up, and it's more of the insurance side of things. We'll have a kid that they get hurt, they let an adult know, the kid seems fine, so the adult doesn't report it, and then we find out the kid has a broken finger, or they say that they shipped a tooth in school. So we just need to make sure that we have a good paper trail when the kid is getting hurt. The change of address is back in that, and human sexuality is almost identical to West Side's, except they did add where there could potentially be some materials, PE, health, science, nurse discussion about hygiene, those sorts of things. Added that one piece with the dress code and then the bullying. Bullying, this is just things that are initiated off campus, saying that the district only has the authority to impose disciplinary action if it is impacting the educational environment of the students. So if there's something that happens off school, it's not impacting the educational environment, the school doesn't really deal with it at that point. Middle school. Okay, these ones got a little bit confusing to me, but I think I got through them. So, the partial day expectations that she has, it's not referenced in the current handbook, so this is new language that she wants, or that Kelly is recommending. Jordan did say that she agreed to all of these, so I did talk to her prior, because I know she's the one that's gonna have to live with any changes to the handbook. That one is disciplinary, health, or other reasons determined by the principal. Students can be assigned to a shortened schedule at Sidney Middle School. Students who have their schedules adjusted in this manner must attend Friday school to compensate for some of the hours missed with this adjusted schedule. Additionally, students who have been assigned this option are not eligible for attendance on field trips, assemblies, random recess, etc. That one is probably fine. I think the one thing that you would have the ability to do in this is if you adjusted their schedule you wouldn't necessarily have to make Friday school mandatory. Probably would be for situations where you're doing it because of disciplinary reasons. Friday school, they don't, right now, they don't specify rules for Friday school. She's proposing to add this new language. Mandatory Friday school reasons may include, but are not limited to, you can see the areas that they're gonna add on there for why they may need to go to those. And then parents being responsible for the transportation. This is just pretty much how they're already running Friday schools, so she's just putting it into words. I think everything on that's fine. Current dress code,
Do we wanna change that wording then in that first paragraph, where it says must attend Friday school to maybe required to attend Friday school?
oh, up here, yes. Let's go, so students who have their schedules adjusted in this manner may be required.
Yeah, to attend Friday school to come.
Yeah, let's do that, may be required.
So I guess that gives the option.
Yep. Well, it actually gives your administrators more flexibility.
Right.
May be required to attend. Okay? Sorry, I was moving
No,
along
that's
pretty quickly.
Okay, dress code.
Okay,
Do
dress
you wanna,
code.
sorry, in that same paragraph at the bottom where it says they're not eligible for attendance on field trips, blah, 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 do you wanna change that to say may not?
May not
Yeah.
be. Yes, we can. That still gives them the flexibility to do that if they want.
Yeah, cause I mean,
That gives your parents an opening to argue.
It does, actually.
it does, but I mean, I guess the problem is when you talk about health though too.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
someone's sick,
Right.
and so they have to miss half days, but then they can't go on field trips.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
I guess it's just gonna be on Jordan to be very upfront and official in the situation. Be very clear.
Yes.
You know, the only other thing is you split the two up and you make one disciplinary and you make one health. Yeah.
Yeah. If you do, on the disciplinary side, you can just leave it as will not.
And must.
Yeah, and then the other would be
Or
may
you-
not be
Instead of
allowed.
cutting into two, you could just say, if, I mean, yeah, just add a sentence about if it's for disciplinary
just take
reasons,
health
then
out of
they're
it.
not eligible for attendance.
Yeah, that's the other thing, you could probably.
Just take health out of it.
'Cause I can't imagine if somebody has a health reason that you would make them go to Friday school as well.
Right, so if you take health out of it, then you kinda.
For disciplinary or other reasons determined by the principal, I think
Right.
that leaves it open enough.
Yep.
Probably good. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we're on dress code?
Yep,
Yeah.
dress code.
Okay, dress code, let's see, so for security reasons, this is what the current dress code says. So everything that she has in yellow is what currently is there, it looks like, and then what she has in green is what she's what she's wanting changed or added. So you can see the top one, so now she wants students in Sidney Middle School may not wear pajamas unless it is a special dress up day. And then she kept the for security reasons in there. I went back and forth on this one, to be honest with you. I guess what constitutes pajamas, I mean, if they're wearing like their Batman pajamas with cape, yeah, probably should.
They make pajama bottoms and wear them.
But I mean, like, you could also argue that sweatpants are pajamas.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So
Whatever you sleep in.
Right, so I mean, I just like, I don't know if it's necessary, but, I mean, there's a reason she's putting it in, and I'm guessing what it is there were, maybe some kids were wearing some obnoxious pajamas, just whatever, I don't know, but, again, I feel like you could just argue the same with shorts, you could argue that like,
Yeah.
shorts, you could say the same for sweatpants, you could say, I mean, there's so many forms of pajama.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one to, it's a hard one to enforce, right? Because there are so many options for everything now.
Yeah.
There are sweats that you wouldn't be, you couldn't tell if they're sweats or pajamas.
I'm just,
I don't think that one's gonna fly.
No, I mean, but it's kind of one of those things for you though as a group, when you start thinking about some of the more controversial issues you'll end up dealing with parents, and dress code is one of them.
Right.
Because they get pretty heated when their kid gets sent home because they get dress code.
Well, and I mean, even in junior high, the majority of the clothes are approved by the parents long before the kids really
Right.
care, so.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's necessary to leave it in. I mean,
I don't know. I know that these are the ones that I deal with a lot too, where I get calls and sometimes it's like, I think we need to pick our battles a little bit as a school.
Right.
And if it's not distracting to other students, I don't see why it should really be that big of an issue, but.
right, cause I mean, we already have that in there, right?
Right.
It's distracting apparel, so if they come in with, inappropriate material on them, on a pair of pants, whether it's sweats or
Yeah.
pajamas, it doesn't matter.
Right, they would still be dress code.
Yeah, they're still dress coded. I get, I mean, I understand what Kelly was trying to get at with it, right? Is you're going to school, you should dress for school.
It's a dress for success kind of thing.
Right, so I get that aspect of it, I just wonder if it's gonna create more battles than.
It's also a piece that you get a kid that gets dress coded and they get their friends all on board, they're all gonna wear pajamas.
Right.
And we've seen that every
Yeah.
other year, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I'm kind of the belief that I think we really need to sometimes pick our battles, and this one's not necessarily maybe a battle we need to bring on.
Yeah.
Called them soft pants in our house. And we played hell getting rid of them.
Yeah, I just don't think it's necessary, honestly.
I think you could take it and say, these are, it's all over the board.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to even what Sherry and Sarah put in there is with other distracting attire.
Right.
That pretty much could cover
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
Is that in the middle school handbook? The attention attracting apparel?
Well, it's actually part of our policy, I think.
Yeah, it's
It's board policy, so it doesn't necessarily have to be in there.
Yeah.
I would take it out. And I guess give Jordan the opportunity to add it next year if she really
Yeah.
has an issue with it.
Yep.
But as a, first year coming in, let's limit her battles.
Right.
Mhm.
That was what I was thinking when I read through that section.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, current student planners, and this is cleanup, just to match with current practice, the language would stay the same except for the strike-through language, that's pretty simple, I thought. Current school-sponsored activity absence, and what they're proposing, the only thing, 'cause I was reading through this, like trying to figure out where it changed, and it was, I should have made the note because I did see it. It was like, well, she added to the bottom, in the event that the student makes up work in advance and is not permitted to attend the event, she must attend his or her regular classes. I didn't see a ton of change though between the last one, but I know I saw what it was.
It's kind of, I don't know. Obviously, I haven't had a kid in middle school for a few years, but it's like you cross out that it's a makeup slip, but then
Yeah.
you still gotta get your planner checked off. So I guess they have a separate makeup slip now?
Oh, they just took planner out.
Yeah.
Right? The completed planner makeup slip, now it says the completed makeup slip, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Okay, current admit makeup procedure, missing school, returning to school. This procedure is no longer used.
Okay.
That
That makes sense then.
Yeah, I think that one's okay now. So then the proposed, that what they're asking for is current or late missing work, students are expected to complete all assigned work acting on time, students come to class. Students may be required to stay inside during lunch after school, miss activities, Friday school, additionally students in school sports may be held from class. So I mean, basically just adding, because they don't use the top language right now, so they're just adding what they have right now.
Yep, okay.
Revised, late, missing, or unsatisfactory work, eliminates the reference to TTC. So all they did in that is they took the TTC out for the current late or missing work. Current Google Classroom is, she wants to strike that because they're not using the Google Classroom as a requirement like we had to during COVID at times. Following expectations, so again, she took out TTC on that, and that was all of her changes. Now, this high school one, there's a little bit more to it, but I just talked briefly with Ben on it, and I kind of agree with the changes. So if we go to the human sexuality part, that's where it says, it went from no less than 48 hours to no less than 5 days, and set up a location for the context summary to be viewable on the school website or by request. So that was where he changed just the wording on the human sexuality piece. So the eligibility policy, the way that it is now, is if you have, I wanna say if you have 2 Fs, it is, if you have 2 Fs after the 4th week of the quarter, you're not eligible for that week until the PEC list comes out the next week, and you can get off of it within that week. So they're changing that now to after the 3rd week of the quarter. So they're moving it back a week, and you can only have, if you have 1 F, you are not eligible to participate the following week until you get off of the PEC list. So basically it's saying you have to have all grades above an F. Pieces of this were taken from what our student council actually took on. Pieces of it are from MHSA requirements. Like you can't use summer school credit for your GPA for the following year. Things like that. But I talked to them about it. I talked to Danny, I talked to Carl about it. I was part of rewriting this quite a while ago. We went to the 4 weeks because we were having problems with some of our staff members have more grades than others. So if you only had 2 grades in over 4 weeks and you had 1 bad grade, that was probably why you're failing. So we gave them an extra, or we gave them that 4-week grace period. They're wanting to pull that back to 3, which is probably enough time. I mean, and then it's basically saying you're gonna have 2 Fs or you can't have any Fs. I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm okay with us being a little bit more academically strict than loose, but I also understand that I see the PEC list all year long, and this will impact some activities. And that's, I mean, that's.
It is what it is.
The battle that they're gonna take on that day.
How many people do you think it would affect if you left it at 4 weeks versus 3 weeks?
I don't think that part probably changes a lot. I think the 2 Fs versus the 1 F does.
Yeah.
Cause you do have some kids that, and like, you take your freshman, for example, the transition to the high school is tough. Their English class is tough. They've got science classes that are pretty challenging. And then the next year you get into it, you got like your world histories. There's some challenging classes they have to take. Some of their maths are kind of challenging. So you'll end up with like a kid that maybe is floating in the 1 F. Other classes are doing okay. And yeah, you know what I mean? It just kind of how that goes. But I do think that this is going to impact more than it does now. Obviously, it's not a script, but if they're willing to take it on, I guess, to me.
Well, they did add this too for the first 3 weeks too, where it's based on the previous quarter. We didn't have that in there before.
Oh, they didn't?
I didn't see it in the other wording. Which just means you don't get a free start every quarter.
Right. Which I think is probably a good thing.
Well, you're gonna know it's not gonna work after the first year, right?
I'll be after the first quarter.
Yeah.
Because
But
anytime you take like your sports that you have a lot more athletes in, that's when you're gonna start to see it.
Right.
Football, see it, track, see it.
I guess with that then, so come August, that's based off of the previous quarter.
Yeah.
The freshmen don't carry over. So freshmen get the freebie, everybody else is based off the previous
Yeah,
quarter.
and I know Georgiana said she wanted to align her eligibility to what the high school has, so it's more consistent.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Yeah, I mean, I'm all in favor of making it stricter and making the kids pass, you know, to get to do the activities. Do we, I guess, have they looked at how many ineligibilities we'll have come the first 3 weeks of August?
Well, if you looked at the PEC list, it would scare you. I know Russell gets it. It's alarming to me that we can have 150 kids that have an F.
And it's alarming how many are failing
Multiple
classes.
Right.
Like it's 3, 4.
Well, when you really break it down and go through it, it's probably 5% of them are in activities.
Yeah.
It's not a huge percentage, but it's still 5% of them.
Is that the list if they have 2 Fs? Or
Yeah.
That's if they just even have one.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a, I just look back to like, and I'm not saying that things are perfect, but I don't remember kids having Fs very often, and we have 150 that have at least one, if not multiple. So I mean, it's scary to me, but because.
Out of curiosity, do you know how the student council came up with that? I mean, did they just do that on their own?
Yeah, they worked with Danny, so the assistant principal was in charge of them, and that was one thing they thought that we needed to be more strict on.
Yeah.
And of course, those are kids that do well in school. That was something that they thought maybe they could make it a positive impact on the school with, and Danny let them kind of go with it.
Well, that came up this year in Culver's class too.
I also believe they sent out surveys to the student,
Yeah.
Oh,
to
okay.
gather ideas. I believe
Yeah.
there was actually from that on Wednesdays where
Yeah.
kids were filling out surveys on it.
Okay.
They did quite a bit of work on it. This is one to me, like, makes more sense than math policy, but.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Obviously, it's predominantly student-led, you know, so that's something that we stress, you know, when we've gone into Fulmer's class of, hey, if you want change, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to go through the channels. They went through the channels and, you know, I don't think, there might be an effect, but at the same time, I don't think it's bad on our part to say, hey, we want our kids and our activities to perform better than our standard student.
Right.
You know, we expect more out of them, we expect more, you know, in their activity, but we also expect more of them in the classroom.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I mean, you know, guess we'll see how this year goes. And
Right.
there might be a big push to change it again, but.
It could be. I just know, like, even when I was a part of changing it, it was, like, you had to have like a 1.0 GPA.
Right.
In the previous semester, and it's like, oh my lord, like, why don't we maybe require something of them?
Yeah.
You know? So that's why we kind of went back to like something more of this model, but I'm fine with it if you all think it's gonna be doable.
I mean, I don't see why it's not. I honestly don't. I don't think we have any teachers that if a kid is putting in effort, isn't gonna garner a
They're gonna
D.
be passing.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, if they're turning in their work
Right.
and putting in an effort, they're not gonna have Fs.
Yeah.
The only kids that have Fs are the kids that aren't doing their work. So.
Or they're doing it, they don't turn it in, which we have a lot of.
Right,
those too.
yeah, that too, but yeah, I think, you know, putting some of the responsibility back on the kids is a good thing. Oh, for it.
Okay, and then the last thing that they did is they did not put their honors program that was approved last year, didn't make it into the handbook, so that's gonna go in the handbook. And that was already approved by you.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Wow. And then the last one is the current meal charge policies. This is what we had in here, everything that I struck, because it's not being done. So basically this is saying, if you have a student that has, like, as soon as they become deficient with their lunch balance, they're supposed to be provided an alternative meal, which is like peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We don't ever do that, we just give them a meal. I don't see why we should have it in the handbook that we're doing that, because it's not what we're doing. I do think that it would be good. We have it in here, we kept some things in here, like the very last one is all delinquent accounts at the beginning of, not May, but June. Of the current school year will be subject to collections for payment per state and federal guidelines. We've never done that either, but it is something though that's in there. Like, if you just have people that like, they're just refusing to pay just because they know they can get away with it, at least you've got some teeth in there to try to take care of that, so. Okay. Okay, back to second reading of board policy 3416 F1 and F2. Minor changes at the very top in red, authorization for physician prescribed medication and for over-the-counter medication. The TR6 bus route will be in the consent agenda itself. On page 48, this is the Montana Rural Education Association dues. If you look into the boxes, they added some things to these. They actually added legal counsel into this. We're currently using MTSBA, and I would like to actually see if we can get a contract with one other group that does a really good job. We haven't worked with this group specifically. I talked to the administration. They didn't think that we necessarily needed the legal counsel option for this one right now. But we did want to do the membership, which does include the Montana Cooperative Services Agreement for free, and then free food bid membership, which I'll work with Shelby on. So that would be option 2 is the one that I would recommend that we go with. Okay. Starting on page 49 is the continuing ed grant applications. We had 2 this year, Caitlin Bell and Katrina Workman. They'll be on the consent agenda for approval. Page 54. That's the 2025-26 activity advisors stipends. They're paid in 3 installments. You can see Talon. There's the fall and the spring is open. We actually have 2 people that have put in a letter of interest for those, so we'll make sure that we contact them. I was kind of waiting for Ashley, if she ends up doing it, whoever our new AD is, to have them work with them. And then Science Club, that'll be open. I'm guessing that one of those 2 will take that on. Page 55, this is an independent contract for a school psychologist. Lisa Stroh, she lives in just outside of Harlem. So she does this with a number of other schools. So the contract that we have for her and what we talked about is she would come down to Sidney. She'll test a bunch of kids in a week. And then she pays for food, she pays for room, she pays for all travel, that sort of thing. Because she doesn't she doesn't want to add it on top of what she's doing for the testing. So what we're doing, instead of $1,700 per test on the kid, we increased it to $2,000 because she had an hourly if she has to do other tests. So instead of doing that, we just went to $2,000 per test, and then we don't pay her an hourly amount. She just finishes every single kid regardless of what she has to do for testing. If it becomes like some crazy unnecessary thing that she's out to do all this stuff, we'll have to pay her hourly, but we don't really have a lot of those situations. So basically, as far as the budget goes, you're looking at, for the school site, we average between 35 and 45 tests a year. So we would budget 90 for this on the high end. And then on the low end, you're looking at, 7,000. Sorry, 70,000. So, hopefully we don't always fall at the high end, but you know how that stuff works. So this is a contract that would take the place of Jill Hours. And then the next one on page 57, this would be a memo of understanding with Chanel Latta. She's a speech and language pathologist. Currently, we do have our district speech pathologist, but she is slammed. I mean, as far as the number of kids that we have in that program. So this person would be able to come in, especially at the beginning of the year, and help with the testing and things like that to get everything started, to ease a little bit of the pressure off of her. And this would be, I believe she's an hourly at, looks like 95 per hour. Yep. And I know last year we did use this person in the month of September and October. Okay, that's all of the artifacts I have for the consent agenda, and I'm ready to roll when you are.
Go ahead.
All right, so approval of minutes. All recorded board meeting minutes must be reviewed and approved at the following board meeting. As you review the meeting minutes, please make note of any additions or changes that need to be made. Recommendation, approve the board meeting minutes for the board meeting on 5/12 and 25. If necessary, agreed upon changes. Warrants and claims in accordance with board policy 7326. All financial obligations and disbursements must be properly documented. The documentation must specifically describe the goods, services acquired, and the proper budget item for appropriation. So this is gonna have an additional piece to the recommendation. Approve all claims, payments, and cancellations as presented, and allow for the district clerk, right?
To cancel.
Yep, so allow for the district clerk to cancel any claims or warrants issued prior to July 1st of 2024. So if we have a check that's been out there for over a year, the fiscal year, we're gonna cancel those checks, if that's okay. And then another with the ASB, accounts and transfers the same. I recommend to approve the ASB balances, transfers, payments, combined listed accounts, and voided checks as presented above, and then allow the district clerk permission to cancel any ASB warrants written prior to 7/1/24. 25-26 handbook changes. Each year our building administrators review the student handbook and make recommendations to the superintendent for changes. I recommend to approve the handbook changes as presented with the wording changes that we discussed earlier. Second reading, board policy 3416 F and F2, F1 and F2 in accordance with board policy 1310. The final vote for adoption of changes to district policies should not take place earlier than the second reading of any particular policy. The forms presented above represent minor changes to assist secretaries with completing registration obligations. Recommend to approve the second reading of board policy 3416 F1 and F2 as presented. Tier 6 bus route reimbursements. This is the one that the auditor came in and told us we needed to start doing. I recommend to approve the bus route reimbursement claim for the 24-25 school year second semester. 25-26 MREA membership dues, we talked about those and what comes with those. I recommend to approve option 2 of the MREA proposed contract. 25-26 continuing ed grants. We do offer up to 5 of these.
After this, it's a first come, first serve, so you can still.
Yeah, we can still bring them in. Really, to only have 2 is kind of surprising, knowing that there's a lot of staff members that are taking classes. But so Katrina Workman and Caitlin Bell applied for those. I recommend to approve the continuing ed grant recipients for the 25-26 school year. 25-26 advisor contracts. Each year the board must approve the contracts for paid advisors and clubs and activities for the district. I've included a list of all advisors for the 25-26 school year. Recommend to approve the hire of all listed advisors for 25-26 school years presented above. 24-25 budget spending authorization. Each year the trustees must grant approval for the district clerk to spend the remainder of the general fund as needed. We have a few projects and programs we'd like to pay for out of the 24-25 budget if we have the money. Approved to give Tracy Click the authority to spend the remainder of the 24-25 budget as necessary. 24-25 compensated absences fund transfer. State law provides for the school district to maintain a compensated absence account to pay for sick and annual leave expenses when a classified employee or administrator leave the district. The law limits the cash balance in the account to 30% of the estimated liability of sick and annual leave expenses. State regulations allow the district to transfer year-end general fund monies into the compensated absence fund if budget and cash are available. I recommend to authorize the district clerk to transfer an amount not to exceed the 30% allowed by law from the elementary and or high school general funds into the respective compensated absence funds, provided funds are available. ASB end of year account closure and transfers participation fees for 24-25. So each year, at the end of the year, the Talon proceeds are divvied up amongst people that worked, and then the high school participation fees are divvied up amongst all of the activities. And then we also need to create an account for the incoming class, to be our 6th graders of 2032. 2032. And then the last piece would be, we want to cancel the senior classes account, their ASB account, and that money, whatever's remaining, goes into an alumni fund. So, recommend to do all 4 of those. Does that work?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, school psychologist contract, we looked at that contract. That would be in place of Jill Albertson. I recommend to agree to the terms of the school psychologist contract with Lisa Stroh for the 25-26 school year. Speech pathologist MOU, that would be used as needed. We'd approve to the terms, I recommend to approve to the terms of the MOU with Chanel Law for services as needed for the 25-26 school year. And then new hires, we have Mariah Center, 7th grade English, Cheyenne Christian, K2, that'd be full day kindergarten teacher, Ashley Koppel, athletic director. I'm gonna take that off of there because I have that on a separate piece, which would include the other. Amy Crank, preschool parrot, and Julie Batty is one that I have to include on there. That would be full-time secretary at Central. I recommend to approve the employment of the recommendation hires for the 25-26 school year pending reference and background checks. And that's the consent agenda.
do I have a motion to present, or to approve the consent agenda with all the changes discussed? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, I apologize, that one's kind of a bear. Okay, so on to activity director and contracts. We could go through these, this is certainly not set in stone, and this will be a decision we'll have to make tonight. So we did receive 3 applications for the activity director position, and the interviews were conducted by the, high school principals. Ashley Koppel is the candidate that was offered the position and has accepted pending board approval. So this is where I came to with the salary, and I know that there's probably gonna be some opposition, but we can talk through that. So I would recommend to start this position at $77,000. There's a number of administrative duties that go along with that, along with the supervision of events and evaluation of the number of staff members. Previously, Mr. Lee would have been up for, with his $44,680 activity stipend, he would have been at $71,980, so basically $72,000. Which he was also getting full family medical, that would have pushed that to over 100 if you look at what is actually involved in that, so. I'm recommending to start this position at $77,000, just as I start looking at what some of the 80s around us were given. I'm not sure if any of you follow Glasgow's very closely.
Yeah.
That was a very high one. That's
an
about as
outlier.
lucrative as they probably get.
Yeah.
As you can tell by the number of applicants too, they're not necessarily sought after jobs right now. There's a number of Eastern AADs that left their positions for various reasons. This would be my proposal to start without a family medical package. It'd be the same thing maybe that we did with Chris. If you get to like that 3rd year, that 10-year contract that we would have for teachers, then you would look at potentially adding a medical package to that. And that's not guaranteed. I think that would be based off of job performance. So again, that's not set in stone, but it would be to me where I think that the administrative duties that come with that, it would make sense.
Are there some duties that you could elaborate on that might allow us to get more comfortable with this number? Like things that maybe she would be, that you could put on her?
Some additional things that would be outside of what you
Yeah.
have right now, in like to me, I think some of the responsibilities that they should probably do, and I know that sometimes they're on them, but I think that they should sit on like the chamber activities board. And I don't know if that was always the case. I know that they do some of that stuff when they're looking at like running the 2C tournament, so they can talk about how they collaborate in doing that, but I feel like that would be an appropriate board for them to sit on.
Are there any administrative duties that you can think of that you could possibly transfer to her from either yourself, Daniel, or Carl that?
I mean, you're for sure looking at all evaluations of your coaches. I mean, that's the one piece that's probably the hardest, right? Especially if we're very specific about what that should look like. And I felt like we finally came to that, but I don't know, I guess I haven't always been comfortable with the information that you guys have been given on coaches. I think that it should be more.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because we want to make it an extremely negative thing. It's just, you can't always just get the good without the bad.
Right.
To be able to make an informed decision.
Is there any way that we could, if we're struggling with having, kids with poor grades that are in any type of extracurricular, is there some type of, like, school study program that they could be involved with, or that we could start, like most collegiate athletes, if their
Mhm.
grades are suffering, they have a,
Mandatory study group, we had
Yeah.
this as freshmen, everybody had to go.
Yeah, so, could we implement something like that, or?
So right now, we have a tutoring program that they use. It's only on Wednesdays though, I think. They do that with NFH, or sorry,
NHS.
About that at school.
Yeah.
That's
guess where I'm coming from is if you wanna give her more money, I wanna see her maybe do a few things.
Well, and actually we're taking stuff away from her, so that's that's my concern is okay, she's gonna get 5,000 more, I understand the insurance, but it's not like in 3 years she's gonna take a cut to get the insurance, right? Her compensation is gonna
Right.
massively go up if she gets that thing, so just from a compensation standpoint or just a salary standpoint, she's getting $5,000 more. And we're also paying someone at the middle school $6,000 to do some of her tasks. So it's kind of a weird thing, and you know, I'm sorry, this is someone that quit on us last year. When put in a role where she had to do administrative duties, she quit mid-year and left us hanging. You know, that's hard for me to say, yep, I wanna bring her back and give her all these responsibilities again. That's a tough thing, and oh, by the way, hey, here's $5,000 more that Chris got to do less work.
And again, this is your decision, this isn't mine.
I mean, I get it, and I know the Glasgow contract kind of blew everything out of the water. You know, that is, unfortunately, it's a pain in the butt to try to find, you know, last minute what people are getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could have probably reached out and got this if we knew, but, you know, this kind of, last board meeting, we had no applicants, and now we have someone with an offer. And I think that's something else we need to look at, is how we interview people and what the process is, and who's involved in those. Cause we're kind of all over the board.
It's pretty consistent.
Okay, cause I was in on a high school football one, but high school softball, there was no board member. The last time we interviewed ADs, I was involved, this time no board members were.
We always have at least 2 administrators
Well,
on.
and I get that, but I just.
Any non-administrative position,
Right.
there's always 2 administrators who are involved in
Right.
interviews. And the board is really, you're the ones that set up that you wanted to have be part of the football. We haven't always done that in the past. When I hired basketball coaches at the high school, it was me and one other person.
Right, no, and I'm fine, but it was presented to the board of this, do you want a board member present? And we said yes, and I'm fine with us not being part of that, but if we're considering this a somewhat administrator job, then it should be interviewed like administrators.
And that's perfectly fine.
So, I mean, that's an option. It's hard, I don't know what Glendive, what Miles City, what a lot of these other people are getting paid. It's just, it's hard for me to say, cause we haven't done this, right? We don't give somebody with no experience in that role a raise over the previous person. We don't do that. When Carl moved into the high school principal, he didn't make as much as you were making when you left. Sarah didn't make the first year at Central what you made when you left. We haven't traditionally done this of saying, okay, we're bringing someone in with no experience in this role and giving them a raise over the person that just left. We've never done that.
But then you're saying, like, if we hire another person at Central, we'd start at 65,000.
No, I'm not saying that. Chris started at 50.
He did. And
What I'm
it was-
saying
it was
is,
light for
no, and I get that, what I'm saying is, we don't give them what you're making right now, because if we hire a superintendent, whenever you leave, that has never been a superintendent before, we're not gonna start them where you left off. Because they have no experience, they haven't earned all of that. We're not gonna start them where you started several years ago, because of, normal raises. It's just hard to justify saying, here's this person, we're gonna give them the job, we're gonna give them a $5,000 raise over the last person. And oh, by the way, they're doing less work because we're gonna take the middle school stuff, some of the middle school stuff away.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying. What I'm seeing happening though is like our school psychologist left.
No, I get that.
She can go make a lot more money
Mhm.
somewhere else. And we haven't been competitive at all compared to what a school psychologist can make. And I get it, we can't get there as far as their private contract work. But if we're gonna keep those positions, then we're gonna have to change probably some type of the pay structure for them, for those specialized positions, like speech paths. There are so many schools that don't have speech paths. And the ones that do, they get paid a lot, because you gotta pay them to keep them, otherwise it's just gonna be contract work. I get it, I understand what you're saying, I fully understand what you're saying. But again, like, it doesn't have to be set at this.
Right.
How did you come up with that number? Just comparing the area?
So what I typically do is, it's no different than like your principal position. Like, with the number of administrative duties that they have, plus an extended contract, basically, like, they would make more than the highest paid teacher. And then with him, with Chris leaving and us not paying the full family medical, I mean, you back that off about $40,000, like, that's where the $5,000 and the $35,000 offset to me, like, it financially made sense to me.
What were the other applicants like? Do you not know?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah.
One of them applied for principal job as well, I think. We didn't interview that one.
But I understand the math on this, and I understand where Ben's coming on this, but I would agree to this, but I would also like her to have additional duties, so like in the event that she, we need the opportunity for a substitute or something like that, that she's flexible enough that she can accommodate us in that.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't even be opposed to having her do like what Chris was doing, where he was teaching an elective, like a referee class. Where kids, it would pertain to the activity side of it. It actually helps our officials locally because they can go and do like the elementary stuff, and things like that where your other officials can't. I mean, even to do something like that, I think would be beneficial. I mean, when you really start looking at Chris did take on a lot of things. He really headed like the school spirit side of things, and honestly, our school spirit has gotten quite a bit better. It still has ways to go, but I mean, I think that I'm with you. I'm struggling to come up with a whole lot of things right now just off the top of my
Yeah, I
head.
know, but I'm giving you that as a seed so that you can
If
think
you
about
want her
it.
to have more responsibility, why split the middle school activities director into something different?
Yeah, so really the feedback from Chris was that was probably the most challenging part of the job, was trying to also balance that.
Yeah.
That was the only reason that I put it in there.
Gotcha.
Just the feedback
I
we
totally,
received from him.
I believe that.
But again, that's not like, to me, a make or break. We don't have to put that in there to keep those duties with her, and that's fine. The only thing is once we're done with all of this and we talk about all this, I'm gonna have to go to her and tell her, well, this is what we came up with, and
I guess what are the actual expectations when it comes to like activities? I know that we've been kind of fluid in the past, and I guess I don't really have a good handle on, is the AD required to be at all activities?
like home events.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
That would be in the job description.
Right.
So then what we basically run into is like, if he had to go to wherever for his kids thing,
Right.
he would talk to like myself or Carl or
Right.
Dan, and he would do that. But yeah, they're in their job description, they're supposed to be home events.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we offset those times during the week? I mean, I know like Chris was teaching a class, which makes it a little more difficult, but.
It was in the afternoon, so yeah, like let's say he would stay at the 2C on like a Tuesday night until 10:30.
Right.
He maybe would go in the next day at 10 or 11 instead of coming right in at 8.
Yeah, I mean, cause obviously I want to balance that, and I understand that aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
Is, you have a home football game Friday and then another football game Saturday.
Right.
I don't expect them to be there at 7 AM on Monday. Okay. I just know that, I mean, that's been, and I know Chris, would take time to go ref in
Yep.
Colorado and some of that
So,
stuff.
I mean, there's extra things that he chose to do.
Right. And I know that, but like last year, I think that there were probably some times where at football games, you have the two administrators on the sideline and another administrator in the stands watching this kid play, and Chris nowhere to be found.
That may or may not have happened.
Right. And I mean, obviously, we pretty much all have kids in activities,
Right,
we understand
yep.
how that goes.
know, I always go back to the, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, it's this way that, but, you know, the health of your community, it all depends on a lot of it, you know, how strong your school system is. And unfortunately, your school system, much of that comes from how good your athletics are.
In the eye of the community, for
In
sure.
the eye of the community,
Yeah.
and that's what brings, you know, community spirit and school spirit is to strengthen that. So, you know, if we have to pay a little more and get her to do the things that we want her to do, then, you know, we have to make her accountable.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that, to kind of go off of that, I was thinking about this, is we did have another, like our social media person. And if you go to like Glendive's page, if you watch the stuff that they do for like highlighting students and activities, they do a phenomenal job. But if you would have your AD pair with like your social media person to do things like that, like
Right.
just getting that out there. I mean, Russell could have that for his esports team. I mean, they've got it for everything. And
Right.
They've got action shots. They've got. I mean, it's pretty neat how it's set up. But that would have been one thing that I know for sure that I would have wanted is for those two to work much closer. Chris was very, and I don't blame him. He started that Facebook page and he was followed by 8 million people, it seems like. But he just said if the social media person's gonna do stuff for sports, then they need to do all of it. I'm not gonna keep doing mine. So I mean, I think that those two should work together myself.
Yeah.
If they do, I think that you could definitely, even getting that out to the community, they like to see things like that too.
Well, I think that was our intention with that social media.
It was, for sure. And it's
Was to get
better.
everything about the school out. You know,
Yep.
activities, but everything that we're doing.
And it's getting better, and this
Yeah.
person in this spot specifically has done this before, so I think it'll get.
That is a challenging position.
It is, yeah, it really is.
Yep.
So,
You think we could get the Ranger review to cover Sidney sports?
I think you could.
Because,
You don't think that the Williston Herald will?
no, I don't think they're doing an acceptable job.
For Sidney, I mean, yeah, I've actually thought about just walking across the street and having a conversation with that guy, just because they do a really good job. But. Yeah, here's, I guess, and this is the other thing, and Nikki and Trixie can kind of probably feel my frustration and their frustration with this as well, like taking over this position, you would have assumed like coming in, there is, okay, you take principal job at whatever, just like our teachers is set up, like this is what they start at. Or this is why they start there. It's like, there's no rhyme or reason. It's like you take a dart and you throw it at a board and there you go. That's, I mean, it's just, it's tough, and then it's like, you have to really, you do have to go back and look like, and the school psychologist really was one that triggered for me. But I don't know, and again, like, I get it, like, I feel like it's a lot too, but it doesn't have to necessarily be that either.
I think Chris started lower too because he wasn't certified.
He didn't have his license.
But he just started where,
That was
Yeah.
the last they had it, yeah.
where Ruben had left.
Oh, where the last one was?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cause Ruben was only AD for like a year before he left. Yeah.
I was AD for free for
Yeah.
3/4 of a year after that.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was just, and again, I'm not saying it was right, that kinda got started forever ago, probably when they went to a full-time AD from a part-time.
Right. Well, it used to be just a teacher.
Right, well, yeah,
Yeah.
well, actually, it used to be the bus barn guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Used to be you.
Yeah, Ron
It used to
did
be
both.
Yeah.
And then Gear did both, you know, taught halftime and whatever, and then Gear was full-time, and I'm sure he didn't care, so he just took whatever he
He
gave him.
never was full-time.
Was he? Oh, I thought he was the first full-time. But I'd make a motion to recommend the hire of Ashley Koppel as the district activity director for the 25-26 school year at the salary listed above, without family medical package.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second? Second. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
You're the only name?
Yep.
Okay. Josh seconded.
Yep.
Okay.
Now the next part.
So let's skip the next one.
I think we just
Har, har, har.
Okay, so the next piece is, and this is what I did with this one, just so you can kind of take a look at what it is. This would be your job description if you were to go to like a middle school stipended athletic director. So your athletic director would still be in charge of all scheduling, because those two have to work together. Like, it would just be, it doesn't make sense to me to have your activities director schedule all the high school stuff and not schedule all the middle school stuff, because there's gonna be too many conflicts. So I did put some things on here. I deleted a few things. It seems like a lot, but really what it boils down to is we want them to be in charge of setting up the events. So in the fall season, it would be what I proposed would be like a $3,000 stipend to do football and volleyball. Those are really the only two that they have. Cross country takes care of itself. It's not really even school sponsored, but they go to like one meet somewhere. It would be all of your setup for football, finding somebody to take gate, or they take gate themselves, and then being the on-site administrator for those events. Volleyball, and then the winter would be basically just basketball, because we don't have any school-sponsored wrestling events, and they don't have speech and drama. They would also be in charge of like making sure that the eligibility rules are being followed for the athletes at the middle school that would have to, either they don't get to go to the activity or things like that. So really that's the main gist of it, for what I would do. And like I said, a lot of it this was more so based off of just visiting with Chris and talking to him about some of the bigger challenges. To me, this is an easy, it's not an easy fix, I don't wanna put it that way, but this is something that you can actually put something together on, and it could help with that part of the position. So,
Do you think the fall and spring, seasons will have equal amount of responsibility?
I think it's gonna be close when we looked at it. The only thing that's gonna change, and we may have to add like half of basketball, because next year, boys' middle school basketball is gonna be the same time as girls' middle school basketball. So those seasons they will go now from October to, it'd be the end of October, no, middle of October to the middle of December. And they did that because of, it's a state thing, so the boys finish at the same time and they have the same opportunities to try out for the high school teams as the girls do. Which I don't think is a bad thing. The only thing you'd have that would be added on to that in the winter is they would be doing 5th and 6th grade basketball.
Ideally, it's the same person that's gonna do this year,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Right.
I think so
Okay.
too. The reason I split it is in the event that you have somebody that doesn't wanna do it for both, you might find somebody to do one season and somebody to do another.
Well, and even if it's less days in the fall, it's more physical work.
Right.
Because you gotta set up a field.
Football's a month.
Right, you gotta set up volleyball mats,
Yeah.
basketball, you just show up and plug in the scoreboard.
Right.
Okay, do we wanna take scheduling off of your job description?
Is there scheduling on there?
At the very bottom, it says responsible for organization and scheduling of athletic.
I wanted the organization, not scheduling. I'll take that off.
What if you can't find anybody?
Ashley does it.
We give her another $3,000?
Well, I mean, the one thing with Chris is.
Hey, sunshine.
Yeah, I'm throwing it out there.
The
I
one
was
thing
supposed to
with-
be the bitter one today.
The one thing with Chris is, his contract was it looked like 67.
67,
He got $4,600 activity event stipend, which put it at 72,000. No, I don't think that we would. I think that we try to hire for this, and
Okay.
I think that responsibility would need to fall on you. Yes, I get where you're going with that. I appreciate it.
Thought I'd throw it out there.
Do you ever see the day where you'll have a contract person? Like
Somebody that just comes in and just does that.
yeah,
Yeah, I do.
and you just,
It's the only thing about it is according to the state, they have to have a teaching
For a
license. to get paid for it. I think you do, cause I think.
You know, you're starting to see that in the healthcare field where, you know, you're seeing contract, you know, just straight contract nurses rather than going through
Yeah.
traveling nurse programs, you know, just straight contracts. I'll work for you for a contract.
Right, and that's where I even see your superintendent positions going with all the small schools, is you go contract with 5 schools and I'll take care of all your board packets. You need to deal with your discipline. And that's what it's gonna turn to, because they can't find anybody to do it. I'm not saying I'm going to do that, not even an interest of mine at all, but I think that's where a lot of these positions are gonna go. We're already doing it with, we've had to do it with speech for a while, we're now doing it with school psych, I mean, that's the direction it's going.
This is awful. Did you get feedback of why this school psychologist left?
It basically came down to flexibility, wanting in writing more flexibility within her contract. I think when she first started under Dr. Farr, they had like the verbal agreement that there'd be flexibility, and I don't think that continued with Monty. And the conversations that I had with her, I was fine with it, it was just how to word that into the job description is challenging. I wasn't opposed to it, it was just, I didn't know how to write it in at the time. She just thought, with this one, she knew she was gonna have more flexibility, and I think it pays more. I know it pays more, actually, so.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the MS middle school AD job description position as presented?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
So moved.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? That was the saddest second I've ever had. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All I this time.
Yeah.
Okay. Whew, cruising right along, okay.
Yeah.
Back down to the spring coaching renewal, so I'll start with this sheet. Chris sent me this today, this is the recap, he goes through all of these. So this would be for your softball, track and field, baseball, and then just the recap of the spring in terms of like the letter winners and things like that. And everything that we put on. Do you want me to go through these?
No.
No.
I'll give you maybe some time to read through those.
I'm just curious if you could get all those girls that play softball to play basketball for you.
I have quite a few of them. There is a pretty good crossover there.
6 of them wouldn't be eligible, right? No, 8 of them. 4 8th graders, 2 from Lambert, 2 from Fairview? Or is that 2 of the 8th graders are from Lambert?
2 from Lambert, 2 from Fairview.
And 4 8th graders? Or
Yeah.
are
4
2 of the
yeah.
8th graders from Lambert?
No, the Lambert and the Fairview were high school kids.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, pretty good team.
Yeah, they're good girls. Good girls. So we start with softball. I guess Ben, I'll let you kind of do your thing.
Softball or baseball? Baseball's the first one on our.
Is baseball the first one on your deal?
Yeah.
We can do baseball first.
Okay.
So, paraphrase. As you go through these, you're supposed to have 2 formal meetings with the activities director. One is before your season begins, where you talk about season goals, kind of your expectations of the program, things like that. After the season's done, you go through your season recap, talking about how the season went, and then what your off-season goals are. That's kind of how we've changed that, is we want our coaches to lay out, what are you going to do in your off-season? So, based upon the recommendation from Mr. Lee in the evaluation process, I recommend the rehire of Hunter Gordon for the 25-26 baseball season, and if approved, the rehire of Jade Rice and Jared Jurgens as assistant coaches. I wanted to do the assistants with these if they do go through, just so we have them done.
Do I have a motion to approve the rehire of Hunter Gordon?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any, moved and seconded, any further Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the rehire of the assistant baseball coaches?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Softball.
Softball, okay, same thing, so based upon the recommendation previously in the evaluation process, I recommend that we hire Teresa Edwards as head coach for the 25-26 softball season.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the rehire of Teresa Edwards as head softball coach?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the rehire of the assistant softball coaches for the 25-26 season?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Alright, and then the last one for the spring would be, recommend, the rehire of Stacy Collins for the 25-26 track season.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the rehire of Stacy Collins for the 25-26 track season?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the rehire of the assistant track and middle school track coaches for the 25-26 season?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I apologize for the one on that one, where it said softball. Didn't have power here today, good portion of it. Okay, so the next thing, and I talked with Lauren Barnhart about this. Apparently I did not do this fall assistant coaches. So I want to do the fall and winter assistant coaches, as well.
Really?
Fall. Yeah, I thought we did it.
I thought we did.
She says that she didn't have that, so I'll redo them, and then we'll.
So we just do it in one?
Let's just do them all in one, because I'm presenting them on page 75 and 70.
74.
Oh, I guess. I've got that's baseball chart,
Yeah.
sorry, 75 and 74, 75. So all the fall and winter coaches were brought to earlier board meetings and approved for the 25-26 school year. The assistant coaches presented are all recommended for renewal for the 25-26 school year. Approve the renewal of the fall and winter assistant coaches for the 25-26 school year as presented.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the rehire of the fall and winter assistant coaches for the 25-26 season?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So are these like their actual hours, or is this like their projected
I
hours?
thought she was taking those out. That's what we have to put into report to teachers retirement.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Projected.
I see.
Anything on boys basketball coach?
But got some, I have a conversation with one still that would be a good candidate. And it would also fill a middle school teaching position.
Wow, that'd be awesome.
Was the football, tournament, was it
Yeah, it
successful?
was great.
Good.
Yeah, I didn't talk to Jason about final numbers, but he said that it, I mean, really, when you look at a first year golf tournament, to have 25 teams they ended up with, that's pretty dang good. So they had about 100, just like 98 people, it was one team of two. So they ended up with 98 people that participated, which is great. So,
And a high school team won?
yeah, yep, couple of our high schoolers.
Good. One thing you still haven't presented is your salary for Jordan.
Oh, okay. I know what it is.
Okay. Just so you have to present it.
We should have put that on.
Yes, I did too, and we talked about that too.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else have anything?
So can we add to the, next agenda item, the bus route for the Sonderno family? I know they met on the 2nd of June with the county commissioners to try to get the bus route changed. Because currently the bus stops up there right before you crest the hill there, and, it's unacceptable. So back before they moved there, back when it was a trailer court there, they came down that road and then they just went all the way through. And then came back out by Satras, and that's how they did it.
They did meet with the county commissioners?
They did meet with the county commissioners, and the county board, Josh Johnson, had absolutely no idea what
They were requesting?
no. So.
So we need to work with Martin and just ask Martin to reroute that, so he has it ready for that meeting then.
Who is it that's not getting picked up?
Sondena?
Sondernos, Marcian,
Yeah.
Matt,
Oh, it's down, okay,
you know, next to your grandma's house.
yeah.
Okay. We talked to Mark about that and see if we can get that, cause we have to present those to the county commissioners as well in September. So if we just have that change now, we can just present it and it should be.
I know that that they went, and I would think that there's already, you know, because for years that bus went through there, so I would think that there are some documents for that already.
Okay. I know we had a request to change a route in the middle of the year. That's hard.
Yeah.
Cause you have to get everybody together that goes to those meetings. So yeah, I'll put it on my whiteboard and see if I can get Martin to reroute that, and then we'll take that to the county commissioners and just start next year with it. That shouldn't be tough, I wouldn't think.
You know,